Hello, I'm the real life fake wizard. Hollywood has a problem with saying goodbye. There are countless franchises of movies and television and video games that linger around for far too long. You look at Lord of the Rings, for example. Here you had a perfect trilogy, and then they did the Hobbit trilogy, which could have just been 2 movies, and then Amazon did Rings of Power, which is dishonorable to the source material. And now we find Warner Brothers is doing these Hunt for Gollum films, and following that, there potentially will be a Stephen Colbert written Tom Bombadil movie. You see, it should have just been the trilogy. That should have been it. But because Lord of the Rings is a recognizable and profitable IP, studios are squeezing the property, trying to get as much juice out of the thing before they kill it dead. I talk about this often. The idea that abusing the source material, eventually the very story that is being adapted is weakened. Not that the story itself is weakened, but the impact, the perception, and the inspiration of that story to the masses don't mean nearly as much, if anything, for what it should have or what it used to mean. For example, did you know there's a Darth Maul television show out right now? Yes, a brand new Star Wars show is out with Darth Maul as the lead protagonist. Maybe you do know about it, maybe you don't. Regardless, I'm sure you probably don't care. But think of the optics of that, right? Darth Maul, you know, the guy who Star Wars fans were intrigued by for the entire 2000s and beyond, really. The Sith assassin who was fueled by hatred and he didn't really speak, but when he did, his voice was cool, he was edgy. At last we shall reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we shall have revenge. Like, that was it. That was enough to make fans want to buy up all the Darth Maul toys. Fast forward to 2026, and there is a show with this badass character as the lead. It's something that fans like us could have only dreamed of in 2005, and yet, no one really cares. On April 13th, 2026, a full week after Maul Shadow Lord premiered, Sam Witwer, the voice behind this series' Darth Maul, posted on X, "I'll say it again. You need not have watched any Star Wars to understand and enjoy Maul Shadow Lord." At the time of recording this, that post got 277,000 impressions, and while the sentiment is coming from a good place, like, personally, I really like Sam Witwer and his work. I've met him before. He's a very nice guy. But his claim here isn't totally true. There is a lot of baggage going into this show that you need to know about and understand to be able to understand what's going on. On the same day, I posted an observation that nobody appears to be watching or talking about this show, and that tweet outperformed Witwer's by more than 100,000 impressions. The lead actor of a flagship Star Wars series is seen here publicly pleading for viewership, and a fake wizard pointing out the silence generated more engagement than the play itself. But this is a broader problem. It's not just Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or just movies, it's the entire entertainment system. It's storytellers and decision makers and corporate executives that have forgotten what telling stories really is, and especially what the value is in letting stories end. Today's indie game shoutout is Rogue Knight. Gather, build, explore, quest, and survive a zombie apocalypse that is set in a medieval fantasy world. Venture forth and unlock permanent upgrades by using the heads of zombies. To learn more about this and hundreds of other indie games, visit our free indie game discovery network, fakeportal.com, or scan the QR code on your screen. Now back to the video. So what is a story, right? Well, Aristotle argued in his book Poetics that a story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that completeness is what separates a narrative from just a random sequence of random events. An ending is what gives a story its full shape. Without one, nothing that came before carries weight because nothing was building towards a resolution. A story that refuses to end eventually stops being a story at all. It just becomes, well, the key word here, content. An indefinite sequence of things that happen, none of which matter because none of them are ever final. How many series or games or franchises fit that category now? All of them, perhaps? Look at Marvel. Endgame felt like a definitive ending. That's why all the movies after that felt and performed so terribly. The general audience witnessed the ending in the movie that was established years prior to be the ending. And because this never-ending problem has taken over everything, nothing is worth anything. There are no more stakes. When characters routinely return from death, when conclusions are reversed by sequels, when story arcs are extended past their natural resolution to just fill another season or another trilogy, the audience learns, unconsciously at first and then consciously, that nothing within the franchise has real consequences. And once nothing has consequences, emotional investment becomes an irrationality. The audience does not decide to stop caring. They just run out of reasons to keep caring. It doesn't matter if reviews are good, or, if the access media loves it, or if a handful of Twitter accounts still love said property. It doesn't matter if the characters are beloved or not. Because when a story, or a brand here, has been strip-mined for content long enough, the audience arrives at each new entry point already primed for kind of an indifference, because the cumulative weight of years of unnecessary extensions has trained them to expect that none of it will ultimately matter. Oh look, Darth Maul is back! Again. How many times has he been back? A lot? And how many times have we seen him die? Oh, twice. Two very big ones, actually. And how many times has he lost in a fight? Nearly every fight. Yeah, nearly every single fight this guy loses. So you see, what was once this beloved, silent assassin, edgy badass covered in tattoos and fueled by hatred is now just a guy who loses every single fight. He's just a guy who monologues all the time, a guy who begs for mercy when being electrocuted by Darth Sidious. The weight of what Darth Maul represented in The Phantom Menace is diminished more and more and more as time goes on, and we keep seeing him. At this point, these aren't even the same characters anymore. But again, this is not just a Star Wars issue. Star Trek Starfleet Academy premiered on Paramount Plus in January 2026. As the latest in a decade of Star Trek television expansion. Across its 10-episode first season, the show reportedly accumulated approximately 400,000 total views. Not per episode, cumulatively. That averages to roughly 40,000 viewers per episode. You know what that means, right? Individual YouTube creators with modest followings, like myself, routinely surpass that number on a single video within hours of upload. A franchise tentpole backed by a major streaming platform to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars is being outperformed by people recording commentary in their spare bedrooms wearing fake wizard outfits. In March 2026, Paramount confirmed the show would end after its already filmed second season. Star Trek now has no television series in active production for the first time in over a decade. And maybe that's a good thing. It doesn't need to be this way. Stories that define generations don't need to end by bleeding out in the snow. Star Trek had opportunities to go out on a high note. The Next Generation could have been the capstone, or Deep Space Nine could have been an end point. Those are two examples, but Star Trek has had a lot of good stuff in it. You could have ended it at a lot of different places and it would have been great. Instead, the franchise was extended, rebooted, spun off, and diluted until just 40,000-ish people per episode was the result, which is a number so small it raises the question of whether anyone outside the production offices or Nerdrotic's viewership even knew the show existed. This is what happens when the people who control these properties are too afraid to let them end. Hollywood's reliance on legacy franchises is cowardice dressed up as business acumen. Investing in a new intellectual property is a risk, of course. An original show might fail, an original film might not be the blockbuster we need it to be. Number must continue to go up. There is no built-in audience on new. There's no nostalgia to exploit, no brand reputation to lean on in the marketing deck. Legacy franchises, by contrast, come pre-sold. They have decades of accumulated goodwill to inject our modern sensibilities into. They have fan communities we have to antagonize. And so, the safer bet for all of these executives every single quarter is to greenlight another season of something that already has a name, even when the audience for that name has been shrinking for years or simply isn't there anymore. See, that's the reality we're in now, and that's the takeaway I want you to have after this video. Star Trek would have been better ending permanently than continuing under Kurtzman's reign. Doctor Who would have been better ending with Capaldi than continuing into the Chibnall era. Star Wars needs to end. Halo should have ended with Halo 3 or Reach. Kingdom Hearts should have ended with Kingdom Hearts 3. Lord of the Rings does not need any more movies. Stories should be given the respect to have proper endings, and new stories should be told instead. Even when you think they should keep going, sometimes it is better to end. On April 12th, 2026, the final 2 episodes of Smiling Friends Season 3 aired on Adult Swim. The show had been renewed for a 4th and 5th season. Its ratings were climbing. Its creators had every reason to keep going, and yet they actively chose not to. The creators chose to end their own successful show, explaining that from the beginning, they wanted to put 110% into this show and go out on top. To, quote, leave them wanting more, rather than, oh, that show is still on the air? Oh God. Cusack compared their decision to the Beatles ending with Abbey Road at the peak of their influence. Here we find creators that refused to hand the show off to new stewards. The show was too personal to them. It was too specific to their own sensibility. They said, we wouldn't want to be doing more seasons half-hearted or burnt out or not feeling it. That's not fair to us, and it's not fair to the audience to give you guys slop. The reaction and result to this was immediate and visible. Fans all over the world are mourning now and have mourned the abrupt ending of a beloved series that just a few weeks prior was greenlit for 2 more seasons. Smiling Friends, this silly, ridiculous, absurd show, had creators with more common sense than, I would say, the entirety of the Walt Disney Company. Now, this philosophy about ending on a high note, or even just ending period, is important. In the past, when creators choose how their stories conclude, and especially choosing to go out with the audience wanting more, well, it's because it sets the tone for how that story will be remembered. Nearly 3 decades ago, Jerry Seinfeld made the same calculation at an even more dramatic scale. In 1998, NBC offered Seinfeld $5 million per episode to produce a 10th season of the most-watched sitcom in America, and he turned it down. In a conversation with Howard Stern, he explained that he wanted to respect the audience and end at a point where they still loved what he was creating. Quote, I could not go to that point where it starts to age and wither, and it doesn't take long. The idea of leaving the audience wanting more means the stories end at a bittersweet place, yes, but the audience will move on, having wished there was more story to tell, but still look back fondly on their time with the stories and those characters. The Seinfeld finale drew 76.3 million viewers. Netflix later paid $500 million for the streaming catalog. The property's value has only appreciated over the decades, in no small part because there was never a mediocre 10th or 11th or 12th season to dilute this show. The most dangerous thing that can happen to a franchise is not that people hate the new installments. Actually, hatred is a kind of engagement. If the audience hates what's going on, it means the audience still cares enough to feel betrayed. No, the thing that studios should fear above all else is the moment the audience shrugs and just moves on. When a Darth Maul show drops and the dominant cultural response is silence, the brand has crossed the threshold that no amount of marketing spend or critical acclaim can reverse. These customers are gone, and they are gone for good. Well, you see, Wizard, Maul is #1 on Disney Plus. There's some people watching it. Yeah, there's some people watching it, but Disney Plus is one of the lowest watched streaming platforms in the world. So that does not mean much to me. Modern entertainment operates on a model that treats intellectual property as an indefinitely renewable resource. The financial incentives are aligned entirely towards continuation. Ending a successful property from a quarterly earnings perspective looks identical to leaving money on the table. But this model misunderstands what makes intellectual property valuable in the first place. A franchise's most important asset is the audience's belief that every piece of it was made with full conviction, that nothing was produced out of obligation or habit. They need to feel like what they're watching matters. The moment that belief erodes, the property begins losing something no sequel can restore. All of life is a story, right? And what makes life worth living is knowing that there is an ending. This is not permanent. And with shows like Grey's Anatomy getting 87 seasons and Star Wars continuing on for 100 years, well, it diminishes how important stories are to how we perceive the world. The way we perceive life is through the lens of stories being told, not just our own, but every. Hollywood and the entertainment industry chip away at the value of stories every single day with every single new release. And that means we need to start empowering each other to tell our own stories, to create new worlds, to tell new stories, to tell your own. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire others to do so as well, and for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus.